Rosenstein. He said this in what was it, May 2018 now? I'm pretty sure. Now think about what he's saying there. He signed the third FISA renewal, the fourth and final FISA warrant against Carter Page that, of course, gave the back door to spy on, well, candidate Trump, transition team Trump, and Trump being the president, President Trump. And at that point, I believe that the FBI, John Solomon's reporting has been very clear on this, they finally put together a spreadsheet. And lo and behold, the bulk of information, according to the Grassley-Graham memo, which was the Steele dossier, the Russian lies Hillary Clinton paid for, was, in fact, lies. And as I said to Devin Nunes earlier in the program, it was likely Russian disinformation from the beginning. That would mean that Russia knew what Steele was going to do with the dossier. They fed him all these lies, knowing that it would go to Hillary Clinton, knowing it would get out in the press, knowing that it would impact the 2016 elections in her favor. Now, the narrative from the media mob has always been, oh, no, the Russians were trying to elect Trump. I don't think so, because I think they always saw Hillary Clinton as weak. I think that's pretty transparent. Anyway, Gregg Jarrett is with us. There's a great piece out on this very, very thing. But the guy, I think, that's in the most trouble. Now, I would hope and I pray if there is equal application of our laws and equal justice under the law, it should be that the evidence is overwhelming. It is incontrovertible. We have it all. That, in fact, there was a premeditated fraud committed on the FISA court. McCabe, the deputy FBI director at the time, said no FISA without the dossier. They never verified the dossier. They swore before the FISA court that it was true to the best of their ability, but they were warned otherwise. That's where the premeditation comes in. I can't imagine any scenario where there's premeditated fraud on a court to deny the civil rights of one American and use that information to hurt a presidential candidate, transition team, and then presidency is not a big deal that will result in charges. Gregg Jarrett, you comment on this very thing.
Well, Comey vouched for the veracity of his representations to the FISA court. It was all based on the dossier. He said it was authentic. The documents cited the credibility of his sources. All of that was untrue. And Comey swore under penalty of perjury that it was true and correct, that he was adhering to the FISA law and FBI regulations. Yet when he sought the warrant, he still hadn't confirmed any of the allegations of collusion in the Steele dossier. And, you know, Sean, as you well know, confirmation or corroboration is required before you seek a warrant, not after it. And the FBI and Comey didn't do that. Let me just read you out of the FBI guidelines the relevant passage. This is also under the FISA rules and regulations. Quote, the accuracy of information contained within FISA applications is of the utmost importance. Only documented and verified information may be used to support FBI applications to the court.
Greg, if I may interject before, it's unverifiable. We discovered it's not even verifiable. There was never a shot at verifying it.
That's right, and that's according to the author of the dossier in court documents. Christopher Steele said that, what I have in this document, 17 memos, is unverifiable. It was all based on multiple hearsay, anonymous sources. You can't verify that. Comey didn't care. And so, Sean, I think his gloating last week over the first part of the Inspector General's report was premature. I think he has to wait, and we have to wait for the IG's forthcoming report on FISA abuse. And if it reflects any of the dishonest acts that I think the evidence clearly demonstrates, then Comey is in trouble legally. And he may be held accountable in our system of justice. Maybe he beat the rap last week, but there's a lot more coming.
All right. So if it's premeditated fraud, we know Kathleen Kavlik at the State Department about 2 weeks prior to Comey originally signing off on the first FISA application, then Bruce Orr's admonition in August of 2016, his admonition Everybody was saying it's not verified. Everybody told the DOJ, Comey, FBI, everybody involved knew that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton. They minimized that in the application. They say, okay, nothing's verified, and that Steele had an agenda. And Steele was being paid. Now we know he's being paid by a lot of people. The second part of what Rod Rosenstein says there is, if you find out it's not true, you need to fix it. Now, what's interesting about that is, why didn't Rod Rosenstein by that point know that the bulk of information in the FISA applications was not verifiable? He now has entangled himself in this mess.
He has, and I suspect he will, in the end, if he hasn't already, under questioning, said, I relied on others. I didn't actually read the document that I signed. He gave a hint of that in congressional testimony to Louis Gohmert, who pressed him about, the veracity of the document and his signature on it. And, Rosenstein, as he's wont to do, sort of hemmed and hawed and hedged and was very evasive. But if you read the entirety of his testimony, it sounds like he's saying, even though I told that crowd, and you just played the clip, that how important it is to do your due diligence on this, it sounds like Rosenstein didn't. That's his only way out of legal jeopardy. And Comey will do the same thing. He will feign ignorance and claim amnesia, which is what he always does.
All right, but let's walk through the court case here. You put Bruce Orr on the record, and he sits, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? And he says, yeah. Did you warn James Comey that the dossier was unverified? Yes. Did you warn James Comey that Hillary Clinton paid for it? Yes. Did you warn James Comey that Christopher Steele had a political agenda? Yes. He did it anyway. Kathleen Kavlik, up next. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Did you warn James Comey that Christopher Steele had an agenda and was panicked and had a deadline of Election Day for information? Yes. Did you warn them that the dossier was likely unverified? Yes. Did you? So how many times do you get warned and then you get to say, I didn't know, or plead ignorance, when in fact this was very easily discoverable? Why didn't they sit down their beloved Christopher Steele and say, Chris Steele, tell us, how do you know the stories about hookers urinating in the Ritz-Carlton bed of Donald Trump took place? And why didn't they maybe make a call to the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow and find out if Donald Trump even stayed there at that time, which apparently he didn't?
Well, you should have been a lawyer because you made a very cogent and effective case. The FBI.
If I was a lawyer, I'd be one of you guys. That's the last thing I want. You know what they call a lawyer at the bottom of the ocean. You do know that, right?
Yeah, a good start.
I'm kidding. I love lawyers. But go ahead.
But look, the FBI was warned by Kavlik. They were warned by Chris Steele. They were warned by Bruce Orr, and you've just laid it all out quite nicely. And Comey's only out, this is what he always does, is, oh gosh, Kathleen Kavlik, never heard of her. Bruce Orr, never talked to him. Christopher Steele, who's that? So Comey's
What did you do to verify the contents in the dossier that you swore to in court?
He'll say he relied on others. That's what Comey always claims. But that's not good enough in a court of law. When you affix your signature, you're taking responsibility for the document and the authenticity and veracity of it. And you have to do your own due diligence. You can't just rely on others. So in the end, that may not be a sufficient legal defense for James Comey if he faces an indictment.
What did you think about Jay Sekulow? This blew me away last night, and I think this is huge, that they have filed a lawsuit against the FBI. And then, by the way, where is Christopher Wray cleaning up the premier law enforcement agency in the entire world? Where is his interest in cleaning up this mess, this distrust now that exists because of the likes of Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page? But anyway, that Director Comey had planted spies inside the White House, And they sent the Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI and other offices at the DOJ so they could determine what Comey and his little circle of corruption had done in their efforts to spy on the Trump administration. The deadline passes, so they filed a lawsuit, and they're asking very specific questions about very specific individuals, and that Director Comey, apparently, they believe, conducted his own covert operation against President Trump by putting agents and spies. Now, we know he bragged about doing it to General Flynn, something he said he'd never do in the Bush or Obama administrations. And we know McCabe said to Flynn, no, you don't need your lawyer, denying him of his Miranda rights and constitutional rights, which I think should be thrown out on right there. It's anything, it's over. But if that's true, on top of the spying that went on abroad or maybe subcontracted out spying to circumvent American laws, we really have beyond an attempted coup here, don't we?
Oh, we absolutely do. And hats off to Judicial Watch and Jay Sekular's organization for filing these FOIA demands and lawsuits. And I blame people like Christopher Wray, the current FBI director, who ought to be sacked because he has done nothing to improve the good name and reputation of the hardworking FBI agents. Instead, he has sought to protect the institution by covering up evidence of wrongdoing. He defies lawful subpoenas issued by Congress. He turns down all FOIA requests. He retroactively classifies non-classified information in order to hide and conceal the truth. This is a man who is the equal of James Comey when it comes to corruption and malevolence, and it's time that Christopher Wray say goodbye to the FBI building and leave. And if he doesn't, frankly, he ought to be fired.
Quick break. We'll come back. All right, as we continue, this is now getting interesting, all of this. So we're going to get the Inspector General report on FISA abuse. John Solomon saying, well, where's the grand jury? Would that be something that would have been set up ahead of time? Is it going on? You know, sometimes you don't know that grand juries have been seated and they're secretive, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that could be happening that we don't know is happening? Or is it more likely that after the report is revealed to the public and that the Inspector General goes before Senator Graham's committee and gets all the time he needs to tell his story, that we begin to see indictments of people?
Yes, it could happen and may have happened already. But we just don't know because grand juries operate in secret for a fixed period of time. Prosecutors tend to want to wait until they have all of their evidence firmly collected before they seat a grand jury so that if it takes a long time, the term of the grand jury doesn't expire. So we just don't know. But if John Durham has the Inspector General's report already, that means he is probably putting together not just his evidence, but Durham's own evidence and his investigators, which likely includes a lengthy interview with Christopher Steele, but Bruce Orr, Kathleen Kavlek, and a great many others. Once that happens, they have to seat a grand jury in order to indict because that's federal law. You can't indict without a grand jury.
I got to run, but thank you so much. Unbelievable. It's just now, we're now weeks